Hi everyone, thank you so much for the support out there. I'm super happy to be in the next round here in Dubai. I hope to see you tomorrow and I'm happy you guys enjoyed.
The coach of Roger Federer recently discussed Alex Eala, and he wasn't evasive. No generic compliments or diplomatic non-answers. He identified a certain aspect of her game that, in his opinion, truly stands out. That is a big deal coming from someone who worked with the greatest tennis player of all time for years. Here's exactly what he said and why it's important. Do you believe Alex Eala is capable of winning a Grand Slam within the next 3 years? Please share your honest opinion in the comments. Let's begin by discussing the significance of this specific viewpoint. Because not every coach's remarks merit the same consideration. People in the tennis community listen differently to someone who tutored Roger Federer than they would to a retired journeyman or a casual pundit. Federer is the standard for a particular style of tennis. Graceful, accurate, tactically astute, and based on a technique so flawless that it appeared effortless even when it wasn't. Credibility that cannot be purchased or created belongs to the person who shaped that game and stood in the coaching box during Federer's career. You either earned it by collaborating with one of the greatest of all time, or you didn't. Therefore, it's important to pay special attention to the signal when someone looks at Alex Eala and remarks that something stands out. The remark was made in response to a recent article. Additionally, the distinctiveness is what makes it intriguing. This was not your typical young athlete. Coaches distribute a lot of potentially great future quotes at tournaments, much like business cards. This person had enough experience playing elite tennis to be able to distinguish between a player who had something genuine and one who just looks good. And it was evident that the verdict fell on the other side of that line.
Massive spot to be in for such a young talent, to have a sold-out crowd completely behind her, down at points. Jimmy, how did she do it?
I mean, look, she's a fan favorite, obviously. Everywhere she goes, she has the Philippines cheering for her. They seem to travel to all the tournaments. So every match for her is a home match. And that's a great advantage. She thrives in that field.
You must now comprehend what the present women's tour genuinely looks like at the top and how challenging it is to stand out in it in order to comprehend why that assessment, music, counts. Aryna Sabalenka, the top-ranked player in the world, recently emerged from the Australian Open final. She won back-to-back US Open titles at the end of 2025 and is playing some of the most physically powerful tennis, music, the women's game has seen in a long time. She originally used it as a weapon. She uses forceful ground strokes. Once a question mark, her mental tenacity is now one of her distinguishing traits. She doesn't give away matches as gifts. She is accompanied by Coco Gauff. Even though she is just in her early 20s, she is already a Grand Slam champion, technically sound, and becoming better every year. Despite some upheaval in 2025, Iga Swiatek is still among the tour's most statistically reliable players in the contemporary era. The Australian Open was just won by Elena Rybakina. The women's game is now being played at this company. These aren't paper champions or weak opponents. They are all-around players that have consistently shown themselves to be at the top level. And the question must be, what specifically does a coach with Federer-level credentials notice about Alex that makes her unique when he looks at that field and then points to something that stands out? Based on all that has been published and witnessed about her game, the explanation boils down to a mix of traits that are actually uncommon to find in one person at this point in their career. Court music intelligence is the first. The ability to make decisions in real time under pressure is what distinguishes skilled players from risky ones, not just pattern recognition, which most professional players acquire through repetition over time. EA does more than simply carry out a strategy. She reads the match as it is occurring, makes adjustments, music, and discovers answers and viewpoints that aren't usually the most evident. It is impossible to fully educate that level of tennis IQ. You can make it better. In practice, you can create conditions that promote it, but the raw material must exist. And it is seen in Eala. Her innate hostility is the second notable aspect of her game. She intentionally plays. She is not a player who is happy to wait for mistakes and grind rallies. When the chance arises, she hits through the court, spends time away from opponents, and doesn't back down under pressure. Because the baseline aggression of a player in a controlled practice environment and the baseline aggression of a player in a close third set at a major are two very different things. The last point is worth highlighting. Many athletes who appear aggressive during practice turn quiet under actual pressure. Eala has demonstrated in numerous high-stress scenarios that her hostility does not go away when the game becomes uncomfortable. Her left-handedness, which is not discussed nearly enough, is the third factor. Even elite players who have faced lefties before may find the patterns a little strange, because left-handed players create issues that right-handed opponents do not encounter frequently in practice. The angle of the forehand into the ad court, the slice, and the serve orientation. Over the course of a match, opponents must make minor adjustments in response to all of this. When paired with real, high-caliber tennis, which Eala possesses, it provides a true structural advantage at the highest level. However, this is the point where the Federer-coaching relationship is really essential. Power was never the main focus of Federer's tennis. It was all about movement, accuracy, and making the right choice more quickly than the opponent could music comprehend it. Anyone who worked with him throughout the years, including his coach, was part in creating a game that relied more on intelligence than physical might. It implies that Eala plays with the same level of intelligence, that she is not only hitting hard but also thinking quickly. This is a different kind of compliment than music that most young players receive. The majority of the compliments given to up-and-coming athletes center on their physical prowess, work ethic, and athleticism. The safe music remarks are those. This suggests that Eala is tactically savvy in a way that isn't often apparent on a stat sheet, but is instantly identifiable to someone who has worked at the highest level for years. Let's now discuss her current position on the tour and the actual trajectory, because without context, the praise is meaningless. Eala's music has been continuously growing. Her name became well-known throughout the world when she won the Junior Grand Slam title at the 2022 US Open. However, there is a difference between junior and senior achievement. Additionally, there are several former junior winners on the tour who never made the switch. One of the most difficult climbs in sports is going from junior standout to genuine WTA threat. Additionally, it is replete with players who possess every physical tool but are unable to consistently put it together versus seasoned pros. Her development has been unique in that she hasn't hurried it. She received a foundation from the Rafa Nadal Academy in Mallorca that is based on positioning, patience, and the kind of physical and mental conditioning that results from practicing with other professional players in a challenging setting. Nadal's style of play was renowned for its unwavering competitiveness, physical stamina, and reluctance to concede points. The way Eala competes reflects those principles, which are ingrained in the Academy's ethos. She doesn't give away matches. She forces opponents to earn every point. At the professional level, music is the one factor that distinguishes a player who can advance far in big music competitions from one who wins early rounds. It would be interesting to see how she handles the upcoming Indian Wells draw. One of the tour's most comprehensive testing is Indian Wells. Long games in the sweltering California desert, hard court conditions, and an experienced field. Lucky draws or one-week hot streaks are not rewarded in this competition. You must battle against opponents of various styles throughout the course of several rounds. And the players that perform well there typically have a game that works on a variety of surfaces. Sabalenka is the obvious favorite and will be present. The early or late emergence of potential crossover paths will depend on the draw, but the fact that EA is being discussed at all is important. Roger Federer has already progressed past the stage of being an intriguing narrative and into the realm of being a legitimate competitive consideration, as evidenced by the comments made by her former coaches regarding the particular aspects of her game. For a moment, let's revisit the comparison with Sabalenka since it provides insight into the potential ceiling of EA. Sabalina's ascent to the top was not a straight line. There were years when she showed clear talent but inconsistent outcomes. There was a time when her serve, which is currently one of the most lethal weapons on tour, completely failed under duress. She made crucial mistakes in games that she ought to have won. There were serious doubts about her ability to manage the psychological aspects of Grand Slam tennis. Then something clicked. The mechanics became more tidy. The way of thinking evolved. She managed to compete at the top level without allowing the stress to paralyze her. As a result, the player is currently the industry standard. Eala is traveling down a different route and on a separate timeline. Although the trajectory is similar, her game is constructed, music, differently, being more tactical and less dependent on brute force. The tools are obvious. It's clear that the intelligence is music. Now, when the biggest points in music are at stake, the challenge is consistency and the capacity to give that intelligence against the world's best players. The coach's remark implies that he considers that skill to be practical rather than theoretical. This is important because those who coach at that level are specifically taught to see below the surface of a performance, music, and distinguish between what is truly there and what is being performed at the time. It's also important to discuss the cultural significance Eala brings to each game. In a sport that has traditionally been dominated by players from North America and Europe, she represents the Philippines, music. Every time she triumphs, a stadium in Southeast Asia figuratively erupts. Millions of people who may not have watched tennis before her arrival watch every time her name comes in a draw against a music top 10 player. A player could break under that kind of pressure. Many of them have been broken by it. Most players never have to bear the psychologically unique burden of representing a country's sporting aspirations during a game. Those that manage it successfully are typically the ones who have managed to detach the match from the significance of competing in the here and now without being overwhelmed by what the outcome means to everyone watching. Eala has demonstrated such skill. She has a profile that is actually difficult to discover in a player at this point of development because of her emotional fortitude and the tactical acumen the Federer coach noted. The next event is the Indian Wells tournament. Additionally, the discussion about where her game is going is no longer theoretical, regardless of whether she wins or loses during the first week of March. Reputable commentators from the top echelons of the sport are offering detailed, insightful assessments of her actions on the court. The right thing to do is to pay attention when the man who shaped the game of the greatest tennis player in history points to Alex Eala and remarks that something stands out because he has first-hand experience with what elite looks like. Furthermore, it seems that he recognizes something in Eala. The coach of Roger Federer did not offer meaningless praise. He identified a certain aspect of Alex Eala's game that, in his opinion, truly sets her apart. Every tennis fan is currently keeping an eye on whether the results live up to the potential. Please hit like and subscribe if you liked this analysis so you don't miss any more videos about the players influencing tennis's future.